I feel as a wrestling podcaster, content creator, I have a responsibility to cover the big names in wrestling and the big stories in wrestling. And I can't think of a bigger story in wrestling over the last few days than the amazing lies that my man Hulk Hogan has been telling. Now, Hulk Hogan line, that's old hat, right? Hogan, if his mouth is moving, he is lying. Yeah, why is it that these Hogan lies seem to hit us a little bit harder? I think there's a few reasons for this. For one, Hogan's lies are epic in nature. Hogan doesn't just tell little white lies. He doesn't tell half truths. He doesn't just tell stories to make himself exclusively look good, although that is the result of many of them. No. Hogan's lies are important, I think, because there's such a stream of them. They happen so often that they're hard to catalog, but at the same time, you always know that Hogan is basically lying. When his mouth is moving, he is lying. And we got some Hulkster news the past week. Apparently, him and Bischoff are having a shoot fighting promotion coming out. Real American freestyle. Where supposedly you're taking amateur wrestler. Not, that's not fair. Not amateur wrestlers, non-pros, collegiate wrestlers, all of that stuff. You're taking those guys and adding a sports entertainment feel to what they're doing and hopefully trying to market that. That's not necessarily an innovative idea. It's actually what the UFC does. They don't always do it the best, but they have essentially a sports entertainment model for legit sport. And they're trying to bring that into freestyle wrestling, I guess. Now it could work. I'm not like going to totally like crap all over it. It definitely could work. What can't work is Hogan sitting down on a lie detector test. We saw what Mr. America did on a lie detector test in 2003. Hogan himself, though, he cannot sit for one. I wanted to break down, though, a really short lie he told. He's told us few versions of this exact lie. It's picking up a little bit of steam. But I wanted to actually listen to one version of the lie he told on one podcast and just break it down a little bit and explain how this fits a lot of the notes of a certain genre of Hogan lie.
Coaching?
Shush.
Brock Lesnar first came to the WWE. I got him first, and it was no picnic, believe me. And so I wrestled him probably 10 or 12 times. And I mean, I remember being in Madison Square Garden. The only way I could get him to lighten up on me at all, I would say, "Okay, Broccoli." I call him Broccoli instead of Brock Lesnar. So if you keep doing this crap, you're going to end up in here by yourself. So finally I got him just kind of like go with the flow, which is what we did back then. But I saw his personality develop. I saw him be able to just shoot in there like a monster and grab a single leg, take a guy down, ride him like a government mule, and then at the same time turn into this crazy over-the-top entertaining character. And what we called in the wrestling business a good worker, where you could work with a guy every night and he wouldn't break your neck or cripple you. And when I first got him, he was not like that. He was like a freight train running over yourself.
Oh, Hulkster. Why do you got to do this, Hulk? Why do you got to do this? This is a specific type of Hogan lie. There's a lot of different versions of Hogan lies. There's a lot of different genres of Hogan lies. So there's the Hogan lie that is only disputed by other people, right? There's no way to actually prove it. So despite the fact that everyone who was ever related to George Foreman came out and said that it was a complete lie, the story he's been telling for years, that he was turned down for the George Foreman grill because he didn't answer his phone or whatever, and the grill got given to someone else because they had the shared agent or whatever. It's great. Like almost the entirety of the George Foreman estate has come out to say that it's complete BS. But there's not really a way of disproving that other than everyone saying it's not true. Like his invitation to Metallica. We know he was not invited to fill in for Cliff Burton. That's obviously true. But other than Lars and every member of Metallica saying it's not true, it could be true, right? They could all be lying and Hogan could be the only truth teller. Or when he said he broke all the bones in his back slamming Andre. Again, highly unlikely, but we'll never truly know. But there are some things in the Hogan lies that we can just straight up verify. Like when he said he partied with John Belushi the night before he OD'd. Like when he said that Andre died from the results of the body slam he gave him at WrestleMania 3. We know those things didn't happen. We can verify those things. Like when he said that Elvis was one of his biggest fans. Elvis was long dead before Hogan started wrestling. We can verify that. We can check that. But that's what he's doing here. We can verify the 10, 12, or one time he worked with Brock. And it was not in Madison Square Garden when he first got him. What's ridiculous about this? This has some other classic parts of a Hogan lie. So I have a framework that I've laid out here of the basic framework of a Hogan lie. And there's others, and we only have about 8 minutes. So I want you to add to these. So one of the things you got to do with a Hogan lie, and there are variations, but this is a certain genre of lie. You got to embed yourself around somewhere you could be without like checking too much. Like in my mind, I can kind of believe that a couple of 80s icons like Belushi and Hogan hung out and did cocaine together. That would almost make sense to me until I went and verified that. Brock Lesnar did wrestle Hulk Hogan early in his career. So that sounds kind of true-ish. So you throw off the unknowing interviewer in that section. That's what you do there. You throw them off. So then you're like, oh yeah, that sounds true. I don't have time to Google it right now. You see Meet the Little Mike Tech. No one can get anything together. The other thing you do is you got to tie yourself to someone who is kind of equal in infamy, if not in fame. You never with anyone less. Hogan's never claiming that like him and some lower level guy were just the coolest guys ever and they had the greatest stuff. You know, like all of Cena's friends are like Hornswoggle and all these other jobbers. That's never, you never hear that. It's always Hogan and big star, big guy. In this case, it's Brock, right? He's associating himself with Brock. The other thing with Hogan lies involve other people that can't speak for themselves on the topic. That's why he's saying that Elvis met him or Jim Belushi and all those things, or all the people he supposedly reconciled with 5 minutes before they died, right? You can't really ask those people. And who in the hell is going to get Brock on the record here? Like, hey, did Hogan really call you broccoli? Did he wrestle you 12 times? You know, we can't get that. The other thing you got to do, you got to make Hogan look like the hero in the end. Think about that lie. What was the point of that lie? It wasn't about how cool it was that he got to work with Brock early on or what a part of his career he was. When I got him, I tamed him. I settled him. That's how he became a good worker. Never mind the fact they wrestled once. That's how he became a good worker for that one match with Hogan. Another part of a Hogan lie, keep repeating it. He has said like 4 different versions of this in the last like few months. And this version did not have him getting Brock straight out of MMA, but that's a part he likes to tell. Again, something that is very, very, very verifiably false. And I will say, watch that entire interview with freaking Alfred. Which, by the way, you go to like the worst wrestling podcast or YouTube there is. Go to Alfred, okay? I'm not a guy who likes to start feuds or drama, but that guy freaking sucks. So that's where Hogan and Bischoff, of course, feel most comfortable. Talk about a softball there. I guess he's not with Forbes anymore. Anyway, so you got to repeat this lie over and over and over again. Just like the Hogan, George Foreman grill stuff. I think that has been accepted as fact by a lot of people because Hogan said it so often. Now, I don't think anyone thought that, you know, he killed Andre in his match or that Andre weighed 900,000 pounds, whatever the hell he was saying, brother. But again, repeat it, and people might start believing it. The other thing, and the final thing, it's an unnecessary lie. Hulk Hogan, love him or hate him, has had an extraordinary life and career. He does not need to lie about anything. I mean, he might want to lie about parts of his past. I definitely would if I were him. But he doesn't need to lie. What Hogan did do with Brock Lesnar was actually amazing. Hogan wrestled Lesnar once off of a couple-week feud on the build in 2002 to his SummerSlam match. Hogan put over Brock in like the strongest possible way. No, he didn't take a 3-count pin to him, but he got the life squeezed out of him. He was coughing up blood. And he had a TKO finish on a SmackDown to Brock Lesnar. Hulk Hogan, for once in his life on TV, not even on pay-per-view, put over the next big thing in the strongest possible terms. If Hogan wanted to tell that story to a wrestling podcast audience, I think that's a hell of a story. But no, he has to wrestle him 12 times to tame him because that's what the Hulkster does. But I thought of another part of this lie specifically. Do you remember why Hogan left the WWE? I keep saying WWF. WWE in 2003 or 2002, actually. He came back in 2003. Do you remember why he left in 2002? Supposedly, it was because of the return match with Brock. I guess Hogan was under the impression that he was going to come back and beat Brock the next 2 times to have their full feud. That's why Hogan agreed to put Brock over in the first place. Vince and the powers that be, who I'm sure told him in the night of, Hulkster, you're totally going to beat, NCAA champ, future MMA champ. You're going to beat him, Hulkster. You 7-year-old Hogan with no knees. You're going to beat him. I'm sure that's what they told him to get him to do the job. But once he realized that was not the case, my man split. He was done for until they lured him back for No Way Out with the big return match with The Rock and the feud with Vince. But that's where all that originated from. So maybe he doesn't want to tell the full part of the real story of him and Brock. But the beginning of it is kind of cool. And to be honest, the end is a lot more interesting than any Hogan lie he could possibly tell.